Hi, my name is Rupert Ponton. I'm Head of Insight and Communications at Brego. Welcome to the latest Brego Leisure Intel monthly broadcast, during which I will review what happened to the leisure markets during December 2025. I'm going to summarise activity in the touring home, holiday home, and motorhome and camper verticals during December, along with a short summary of the economic and political position that's influenced consumer behaviour in the UK leisure home sector during the course of the month. So let's get underway with a look at what happened in the economy during December. And we have to say that last month was a more stable month for the government following the confusion that reigned during November in the run-up to and during the budget on November the 26th. Most importantly, the economy showed some positivity off the back of a drop in the inflation rate, which surprised many people by declining to 3.2%, which was 0.3% better than was forecast. Now, this was largely due to prices for food and non-alcoholic drinks, but it is worth mentioning that the forecast is for it to rise slightly in the early months of 2026, and that will be a short-term rise as we expect it to drop later on during the course of 2026. Now, in addition to this, the Bank of England also decided to lower the base rate to 3.75%, which is now at its lowest level since February 2023, which is great news. These two changes did help to bolster consumer confidence, and that improved by 2 points from -19 to -17, although it seems that this confidence did not translate to greater retail sales in any sector in the UK. Not even the 4-point improvement in the major purchase index rate or the drop in the cost of fuel, and indeed the increase in the instant access savings rate, helped to boost spending, which is a shame. Instead, customers changed their spending habits and looked to budget stores for groceries and bought cheaper gifts. And for larger items, they used the buy now, pay later schemes that are available in so many different places. Now, to quantify things further, Barclays Bank have subsequently reported that consumer spending fell by 2.3% during 2025, and that credit card spending fell, but by a far milder 0.2%. So I guess now the new year's upon us, we could do with some more positive news as far as the economy goes. That building the consumer confidence needs to translate itself into more activity, particularly in the leisure home sector. So when we look at the UK leisure market, the used market, we're going to be using insight from the Brego Whole Market data, very, very comprehensive set of information that we can work with. Let's look at what's happened with touring homes first of all. Now, the total number of adverts decreased by 10.9%, and that was a decline of 7.1% in November. Now, normally this might mean a strong sales month. That's usually a good indicator of what's been happening, but the reality is that sales were actually down a whopping 31.5% from November. Even November was down 28.8% on the previous month. However, the good news is they were 5.7% up on December 2024. So not such a bad picture when you look at it like that. In terms of by type of touring home, two-berth adverts were down by 9.9% in comparison to November, and four-berth adverts were down 9.3%. That's off the back of 8.4% the previous month. And whilst we do know there is a level of sales activity out there, albeit reduced, it's likely that the drop in adverts is due to a reduction in the number of units that are actually being advertised by the touring home dealers. And that really is for cost-cutting reasons, when they know the market's quiet and they don't want to be spending unnecessary cost. From a sales perspective, the market share split was as follows. Two berths took 17.4% of the market, which was exactly the same as it was in November. Four berths took 60.7% against 58% in November, and 5 and 6 berth units took 14.3% of sales, and that is slightly lower than it was in November, because in November it was 18.5%. As a comparison to December 2024, two berths were up 1.8 percentage point, four berths were also up 1.8 percentage point, and 5 and 6 berths were down by 3.1 percentage points. Now, looking at days to sale, they increased quite significantly by 29.2 days, up to a time of 76.4 days to sale in December. Now, that is slower than November, as we can see. Just a reminder, though, that this data is slightly skewed this time of year due to the changes and the reduction in the advertising volumes. In terms of the price, the average touring home price came down by 1.6% to 16,397. It would decline by 2.5% in November, so just so you were aware of that. And for further context, the average two-berth price decreased by 2.2%, and the four-berth decreased by 4.4%. But the 5 to 6 berth average touring home price actually increased by 7.3% off the back of 6.1% the previous month. So that's 2 months on the trot that they've increased, and that is uncommon for this time of year. So what about holiday homes? Well, total adverts actually increased by 3.8%. Now, that's a bit of an anomaly for December, and actually it's unique to this market vertical. Both touring homes, as we've heard, and also, as we will hear, motorhomes and campers, they decreased, but 3.8% increase. Sales, and that's indicated by the number of adverts that are removed during the December, highlight a decline of 9.5% for the month of December. It was 23.2% in November, so this is a better picture, but it is the second fairly big drop over the previous 2 months, and really is just a reflection of the time of year. If we look at 2-bedroom holiday homes, they were down by 17.1% off the back of a 22.2% decline in November. 3-bed sales volumes decreased by a much milder 3.3% off the back of 27.3% in November. And I guess, this really is due to the lower footfall and reduced consumer demand at this time of year, and caused by the economic and political position as it stands at the moment. In terms of days to sale, that increased by 16.7 days to 45, still quite a lot lower than the touring homes market vertical. That was an increase of 15 days. So it's taking it back to where it was pretty much in November. But please remember that this is going to be due to sort of the mix of demand and the reduced advertising periods that the dealers and parks are actually working to now. Looking in more detail using the Brego Insight tool means that you'll be able to be much more granular in understanding which parts and which types and which manufacturers experience those changes. The average used holiday home sale price came down by 15.2% to $23,089. That was off the back of a 2.8% decline the previous month. And it is worth reflecting on the fact that pricing can vary pretty wildly at this time of year, depending on the type of advert and, of course, depending on the type of unit that is being advertised. Of course, sporadic demand doesn't help either. Anyway, motorhomes and campers, total adverts dropped by 2.7%. So that's off the back of 1.6% in November. So a much milder drop. And I think that probably highlights that dealers just tweaked the advertising a little bit more during the month and reduced the volume they were advertising, but not as much as we saw for touring homes by all means. Unfortunately, those sales in December dropped by 25.4% when compared to November, and the split was a drop of 27.7% for motorhomes and 21.8% for campers. And again, that's a reflection of seasonal demand. Trade advert volumes were down by just 0.8%, and that's probably likely fair representation of sales activity rather than anything else. But private adverts were down by a whopping 40.3%. That's off the back of 19.3% in November and 21.1% in October. And that really does reinforce the view that private vendors are just not interested in advertising or trying to sell their motorhomes and campers during the festive period. They're more interested in enjoying the fun that they may have at home rather than worrying about leisure pursuits. Hopefully this will pick up again, but it probably won't be until around the February time. Days to sale, there was a big move here as they increased by 37.7 days to 103 days. Now, to some, this might be a bit of a surprise, as there's usually a bit more resilience for this type of product at this time of year, but that's the picture that we've seen, and it is quite a big tail off an increase. The average used motorhome and camper price increased by 15%. It was off the back of 0.6% in November, and the average price now sat in December at £60,083. That's probably influenced by the lack of cheaper privately owned motorhomes and campers on sale, because that's where we've seen the biggest decline in the number of adverts. So in summary, December was a poor month overall, although we must remember that this was entirely expected. Lower footfall and reduced online leads confirmed that despite a headline figure of improved consumer confidence, when we look at the economic position overall, this confidence did not extend into the leisure market, but it's not the only market it didn't work for. For touring caravans, there was a significant drop in sales, although the positive is that December 2025 was 5.7% better than it was in December 2024. For holiday homes, the volume of adverts in the market actually increased, signifying more stock coming to the market. Now, this is really going to begin to ramp up, I would imagine, in February, March time. So we just need to wait a little bit longer, and that's when the sales activity will really start as well. For motorhomes and campers, the volume of adverts remained pretty stable, but sales did drop by 25.4%. And as with the touring homes, this looks to be just a further adjustment to the winter market. Now, we've flipped into 2026 now, and we can start to feel a little bit of hope in the coming weeks. That will be slightly weather dependent as well, although expectations really are for a quiet month in January. But we are fast approaching the Caravan, Camping and Motorhome show at the NEC on the 17th to the 22nd of February. So I think that's when things will really start to kick off. Anyway, I hope you found this a valuable update in what was really quite a complex period. If you need or want any more detail, be sure to read the Brego Monthly Leisure Insight Report, and that can be found on the Brego LinkedIn page, also on the website. So make sure you have a look at that as well. Just for the record, the YouTube channel is called Brego-Official. So finally, just want to reiterate, though, that if you need or want more market insight and to help yourself to understand the nuances of today's UK leisure sector, you really must speak to the Brego sales team. Andy, Safi and Nick would be delighted to show you how the Brego pricing and the market data will help you to improve understanding not only of the market, but also how you can increase profitability for your business or park. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward to seeing you soon.